Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. Today is Friday, February 27th, 2026. I'm John Podhoretz, the editor of Commentary, here to apologize for yesterday's unbelievable blunder in which I told the world that the author of How to Win Friends and Influence People was the industrialist Andrew Carnegie, as opposed to the sort of snake oil salesman Dale Carnegie, and that was really stupid, and it kind of totally ruined the point I was trying to make about how Americans have tended to worship at the altar of the latest hip industrialist, and that wasn't who Dale Carnegie was, and that was really embarrassing. So you can stop emailing me about how stupid I was, because I realized that I was stupid. You know who was not stupid are my co-panelists here today, executive editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John. I'm sometimes
not stupid. Neither is senior editor Seth Mandel. Hi, Seth.
Hi, John.
Very not stupid. And, of course, Washington Free Beacon editor Eliana Johnson. Hi, Eliana.
Hi, John.
Actually quite brilliant. Not only not stupid, but quite brilliant. And here's something that happened yesterday. Netflix pulled out of its bid to buy Warner Brothers Discovery and clearing the way, assuming that it passes regulatory muster, clearing the way for Paramount Skydance to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, why is this of interest to listeners of the Commentary Magazine podcast, unless you are stockholders in any of these companies? It probably isn't, but for this salient fact, which is that this means that it is that the Paramount Skydance bid for Warner Brothers Discovery was for the entirety of the company. The Netflix bid was for part of the company, and the idea was that the other part of the company that includes CNN and a couple of other assets would be spun out, as Comcast has spun out MSNBC and other news channels into a company called Versant, which now owns MSNBC, no longer part of the cable monolith Comcast. That this was going to happen with CNN. It would end up as a kind of standalone in a different company, and everything, and glory wonders of being out of the corporate umbrella. Now, the worst fears of CNN's remaining staff have been realized. They are going to come under the Paramount Skydance umbrella, which of course owns CBS. And as we know, who is now running CBS News but our very old friend and Commentary Magazine roastee, Barry Weiss. To say that the news in Hudson Square, where CNN is now located, Hudson Yards, where CNN is now located here in New York, the news that they are going to be under Barry's aegis is akin to being told that you are about to face the apocalypse would be an understatement.
Can we just do some live reading of the reported reactions?
Please.
The Oliver Darcy status newsletter captured some of the reactions, because of course the first thing the rats on the ship do is run to tell Oliver Darcy how they feel anonymously. So he reports, inside CNN, alarm bells went off as staffers began to panic over the suddenly very real prospect they could be working for Barry Weiss before the end of the year. He says his phone lit up with messages from anxious employees fretting about the future. Here's the quotes. "We are doomed. We are effed. Everybody is reeling about the obvious things. The panic at CNN right now is off the charts," one insider told Status of the larger mood that had arrested the network. And I think the icing on the cake is that Anderson Cooper, who just announced that he would not be renewing his contract with 60 Minutes and focusing on his CNN nightly show, reportedly because he didn't like the direction of CBS, will now end up also probably working for Barry Weiss when she takes over CNN.
I just want to say I have a theory. You know how in the correspondence dinner, Obama made that joke about Trump and how obviously he wasn't really running for president and it was all, just PR trick for his hotels and, whatever. And he made a lot of fun of him. And they cut to that picture of Trump sitting in the audience looking unhappy. And then Trump ran for president and won. And everybody blamed Obama's speechwriters for provoking him. Clearly something, I don't know what, was said at the roast of Barry Weiss. And whatever it was has lit a fire under Barry. And so whatever our role in that as a commentary, as an institution, don't blame us.
I
That's
actually
my
think
theory.
there's possibly a larger story here, probably about the Ellisons' ambitions, which they came back again.
To make clear, the owner of Paramount Skydance is David Ellison. David Ellison is the son of Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison owns Oracle. He is the second richest man in the world. David Ellison, a successful film producer whose biggest movie was Top Gun Maverick, which is the second or third most successful American movie of this decade, and makes popcorn movies, as opposed to his sister Megan, who was making art house movies and was like a big deal in the 2010s until her father said, "You're losing me too much money. That's enough of that with you and your company, Annapurna," and turned his favor toward his more financially successful son, David, and backed this bid, not only to buy Paramount, but now to use Paramount, which is a tenth the size of Warner Brothers Discovery. It makes a tenth of the money that Warner Brothers Discovery has made, and is taking over Warner Brothers Discovery. Like the little fish is eating the big fish. Just to explain who we're talking about here.
Thank you. Yeah, that's important context. So they're obviously signaling they could have done the same thing and said, we're not interested in the news, the money losing or the dying. CNN is not money losing, but the dying news properties. But they're not doing that. They're deciding and signaling real interest in them. And the Netflix deal was closed, and Warner Brothers Discovery has to pay a breakup fee. That was like, and Paramount came back again saying they're going to pay $111 billion, offering a superior deal for this. So the Ellisons are signaling real ambitions to be media moguls, but also news moguls, and to reshape the news landscape in a more centrist direction. And I think a comparison to Rupert Murdoch, although they're not playing overseas really, is not crazy. But David Ellison's 43 years old. He's a really young guy, and I think should be taken seriously with regard to what he's demonstrating, his ambitions with regard to news are, and the risks he's willing to take, and the people he's been willing to invest in. And by the way, the first acquisition was of the Free Press.
By the way, Rupert Murdoch, when he entered into the American market as a proprietor by buying the San Antonio newspaper, he was 43 years old. So just to make your point for you, he came from, elsewhere and started buying up dying properties in a dying industry, afternoon newspapers, and
also with the help of his father, right?
Well, I mean, his father's company, yeah. I mean, although, he had already taken the company and used it in the way he had. The Ellison ambition with CNN, I was just looking at the ratings. So you're saying, "Oh my God, we're screwed." You're quoting all these people saying we're screwed. It's terrible, Trump friendly, blah blah blah.
They're screwed because they're talking about their ideological project,
right?
Nothing beyond that,
right? So here, I just want to share with you the size of the discrepancy between the Fox audience and the CNN audience in January of 2026. Nielsen has a new way of measuring cable audience to television audiences. They call it the Big Data Plus panel. And supposedly these numbers are now getting vastly more accurate than they used to be. So according to, in January, Fox News had 2.046 million total viewers in primetime with, this is kind of amazing, a basic 200,000 viewers in the adults 25 to 54 demo, meaning that their entire audience, like basically 80% or 90% of their audience is older than 55. Just to make that clear, because if they have 2 million viewers, but only 197,000 of them are in the 25 to 54 demo, that's 10% of the audience that seems to be younger than 55. But nonetheless, that's the number, okay? And they grew by 11% compared to December 2025. Now let's go to CNN. During primetime in January, CNN had 660,000 total viewers and 135,000 in the 25 to 54 demographic. So CNN has Fox has 3.5 times the size of CNN's total audience. And though it percentage-wise does better with younger viewers than older viewers. We cite this demographic on younger viewers not only because it sort of like suggests where things might be heading or whose audience might die off sooner than somebody else's audience, but because classically in television advertising, not now, but classically in television advertising, you have wanted to buy ads to talk to 25 to 54-year-olds. Weird reasons, they're more likely to switch brands, and they buy more consumer goods for disposable consumer goods, whatever. Of course, if you've been watching television for the last 2 years, you will have seen that is not who advertises on television anymore at all. I would say that something like 50% of the ads now, particularly on news programming, are healthcare ads. They're drug ads. They are ads for incredibly specific drugs. Like, they're so specific that they're called something you've never heard of. And in the ad, they say, this is to cure my pathological BLZ. And so they don't even explain what pathological BLZ is, because if you don't have it, you're not going to buy the drug anyway. They don't need to waste their 60 seconds explaining to you what this drug is. So it's a very specific, expensive drug that gets advertising, and you have somebody walking around on a golf course, and and then he's bathing, and then they're having a drink with their friends and all of that. That's what television advertising is now. Advertising has already moved into understanding that people who watch these screens, these big screens and cable and broadcast, are old, and so they are advertising old people things to the old people. The larger point I'm trying to make is that Fox has been the number one news network for 24 years now, without let up, but it's the size of its audience relative to CNN's is growing, and CNN's is shrinking. All of these networks, including MS Now, are profitable because of things called carriage fees, where cable companies are obliged to pay, essentially to rent space to put these networks on their cable systems, and they pay per subscriber. And so these are kind of cash cows. Like, I think CNN and MSNBC both make a profit of $200 million a year because of carriage fees. But those are going to die because cable is dying, just like broadcast is dying. That's why Eliana said these businesses are creaking into, basically obsolescence or ruination. But with all of that said, CNN is a dead fish floating at the top of a fish tank, except for these historical carriage fees. It has no cultural footprint. Nobody knows who anybody is on CNN. Nobody cares. They don't make news. The only clips that go viral are clips of their one conservative spokesman, right? The one conservative on the network, Scott Jennings, who gets into fights 3 times a week with people on this show at 10 o'clock at night. So if you're going into this business and you're looking for a market and you think, okay, where do I go to get myself a market? You go toward Fox. You go there. They got a lot of viewers. And you don't know if they like how much they like it or they don't like it. Maybe you supply them with something else that they might want to watch. That's what happens in competitive situations. If sitcoms are successful on NBC, you make a sitcom on ABC. You don't make a non-sitcom. Like if conservative programming is working on Fox, try it on CNN. Who knows? They haven't done that. They haven't had to do that because they've been shielded from the consequences of their market failures by these carriage fees. But if you're playing the long game, you got to start seizing the audience of others. And so the play for Barry to go in or for Ellison to go in and say, how do I make this work? Isn't to double down on the shrinking audience that is a third of the size of the most successful network. That's not how you do it in capitalism. And they're all crying and screaming and yelling because they have Oliver Darcy on speed dial and he's willing to, sort of like crap all over Scott Jennings, the only thing that gets CNN any attention, as he does in his newsletter last night, says, the egregious Trump spokesman Scott Jennings or whatever. But it's just like common
they're
sense.
already starting to pander to Trump. They turned away from the Jeff Zucker resistance that was doing so great in 2016. And he said that basically characterized Scott Jennings as greasing the skids for approval of the Paramount Warner Brothers merger.
I love this also because Scott Jennings literally speaks on CNN 10 minutes a day at most. And then there's 23 hours and 50 minutes of other programming
but he's
in
such
which
a
Scott
star
Jennings is not speaking.
That they're putting him on more because he does rate. And John, I would think about it a little bit differently in that I'm not sure it's like, we're going to go after the Fox audience or other people. But what they showed with the acquisition of the Free Press was that was something completely different. Like there wasn't really anything like the Free Press that had existed before, which Barry said, I'm leaving the New York Times and I'm going to go to Substack and start a new kind of publication that combines investigative reporting, unconventional investigative reporting that's centrist, and sometimes it covers the right, sometimes it covers the left. And I'm going to bring in commentators, center right, center left, but it's that bucks the conventional orthodoxy. And these people, like, they weren't really, she brought in people I've never heard of, but it was like really a new kind of publication. And Paramount and David Ellison like took a bet on that publication and took a bet on her. And I would guess we'd see more experiments like that and new types of programming and people to bring in audiences who are disenchanted by all of the kinds of news on offer, including Fox News. She really cultivated a new kind of audience with that.
I mean, the thing outside of Fox, every other news programming on offer is interchangeable. That is the problem. So to do anything different than just to keep going with this sort of zombified, interchangeable model, it's like when I go to put on the news, and if I'm not going to watch Fox, and I have the other channels there, if it's CNN or MS Now or whatever, it reminds me of when MTV had MTV2 and then MTV3 or whatever, and then died. I didn't know the difference between MTV and MTV2 and MTV3 and MTV Foreign or whatever, you know what I mean? And to me, that's all those news. That's the slate of my news options. They're all essentially the same channel.
You know what's a good example of this is that I'm just laughing about because our style section newsletter covered this today, which is wonderful, and people should sign up for it. But Brett Baer on Fox, interviewed the members of the USA hockey team, and every other news network, the New York Times versus MSNBC, CNN, they're all criticizing the members of the hockey team. And that's what you get on offer. And I think, at the Free Press, they're doing something different than that.
Right. Well, I mean, look, everything is up for grabs in this sense. Like television programming of all kinds is astonishingly conventionally in the model that it has always been in. Let me just give you an example. Why do shows start at the top of the hour and end at the bottom of the hour? Why does a show start at 11 o'clock? Why doesn't it start at 11:32? Why are there breaks in shows? Why are there different shows? Does anybody experience media any longer as discrete blocks of programming in which you say, I watch this show, but I don't watch that show? The people who have been trained in the modern media atmosphere by Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, are not hewing to time periods and, credit sequences and things like that.
You know what else is a really interesting experiment that is doing something totally different is Mark Halperin's Two-Way, which is actually bringing the viewers in and conversing with them at times. And John, you and I have both done this, but that's another type of totally unconventional thing. And I often watch what he's doing there and think this is better than anything that's on offer on television. The sophistication of the conversation, the quality is so much better than anything you can get. Look, I always think my tastes are a negative indicator for what most people would like, but that is what I think.
Right, but look,
the other question is is television in an arena where you can experiment like this? Does it have the room to grow? I mean, if you put Mark Halperin's Two-Way on CNN, what would happen? Would it get the viewer? Would it change the trajectory of the company's viewership, or do we like it because we have because we like the inside baseball stuff, and that's really our speed and our taste, and I'm not even sure that TV has the room to maneuver around this. I mean, the people who watch TV are, as John said, a specific there's a TV demographic. You can experiment with anything on the internet, an internet publication like the Free Press, and see what works and see what doesn't. But CNN's not a startup, and I just wonder how much TV's, how much room they actually have to fix what they're doing and to grow. I mean, they seem to have a fixed audience. There's a TV demographic. Are more people going to be watching TV or TV news? I don't know.
What? But so let's say there's a fixed number of people who watch TV. So you are playing in that sandbox. So there are 30 million people watching TV. I don't know.
Right. And so you would be wise
to, you got to take them away from somebody who has them already.
Right. You would be wise to think what is Fox doing more than what is a new Substack publication.
But let me give you an example of something that occurred to me the other day. So there's MSNBC. It's sort of in the second position, but it's also half the size of Fox or less. And we'll see how Versant does, or what that means, or how they feel about the network.
Was just going to say on Versant, they either have or are about to ink a deal with the Pod Save America podcast bros. And so there you're seeing another experiment that I would guess we're going to see more and more of. Right. Because people are acknowledging that the limits of this conventional, stale cable television format are insufficient.
Right. Well, but I'm thinking, okay, if you're MSNBC, what is the secret of Fox? Trump came in. If Roger Ailes had not been, basically humiliated and driven from Fox and then died, Ailes, without Ailes, Fox tripled down on Foxism and like went further and further into the Trump camp, and fired Chris Stirewalt when he called Florida called Arizona for Biden, and sort of like when this whole way would Tucker would still be on the air if it weren't for the Dominion settlement. And it is this kind of caricature right-wing network. And we look at MS Now and say it's a caricature left-wing network. I'm not sure that left-wingers look at MS Now and say it's a caricature. It's like what we want. It's not supply. It's not like our heroin. So if I were MS Now, you're saying the Pod Save America guys, the hell with them. Like, they should hire Jennifer Welch, this lunatic podcaster. I mean, I don't know if anyone has actually seen her work. Like, it's all over. She's like the celebrity of the moment. She is bananas. Like, if you think she is the Candace Owens of the left, she is a bonkers nut, total out of her mind crazy person. Give her a show. Go get Graham, go get whoever is the Graham Plattner in Maine, get him to quit the race for Senate and give him a show. Get AOC to quit Congress and give her a show. Go all the way.
Hire Hassan Piker. That's their darling.
Go all the way. Have the Young Turks go all the way, because the whole thing is they've all been protected by the fact that they're part of the kind of liberal consensus, which has moved to the left. Inarguably, what we define as liberal now is way further left than it ever was. The way being called conservative now is way further to, I don't know if you would call it right, but way further in some weird swamp than it ever was before. But, they're all part of this ecosystem of the Ivies, and they're all married to each other. They're all they all want to go be members of the Council on Foreign Relations and get invited to give speeches at Harvard and be highlights of their class reunions and things like that. And the truth is that right now the media future belongs to psychopathy. And so if I were them, I would be going into psychopathy as opposed to like being rational and responsible. Even though I don't think they are rational and responsible, but they think it, as opposed to going, oh no, that's not who we are. Like, who we are is we're going to have someone come on and say that, I don't know, it's not only that Donald Trump is a pedophile, but they're going to bring on whoever this psychopathic con artist woman who has been going around saying that they suppressed her totally fact-free, claim that Trump raped her when she was 8. Give her a show. Like, go hog wild, because you've got nothing to lose and everything. And this is the way things are going. And this has become
give
like
Ghislaine
a job
Maxwell
protection
a show.
program for hack liberal TV journalists who no one will remember 5 years from now, who will all be in PR, if PR even exists.
It's a bit like beginning in the late 80s and then well through the 90s. Major record labels started buying up every big indie band that were on indie labels, because the force, the cultural force of what was happening on these bands that were on independent labels was just too big to compete with. So they hoovered up like every last indie band. Now we know the huge ones, but they also, in the process, they grabbed them all. And it was at the point, if you were at all around or involved in the scene, you were like, they're on Geffen now? What?
Yeah.
Like it's like that kind of move. Just like grab them all, because and by the way, it entirely changed the pop culture landscape.
Right.
And what was the lesson that they learned when they hoovered up all the independent labels? The lesson they learned was that they didn't learn taste. They just hired people who
Yeah.
seemed to have better taste, right?
Yeah.
They didn't learn, like, they didn't suddenly learn how to spot talent, at a local club. They just hired people who seemed to get there. That's the other problem that these networks face, which is like you can't teach the ability to do what they need to do. Apparently, they don't. It hasn't changed their taste, their ability to recognize, MSNBC becoming, M Snow and whatever, MS Now and all these different, like, nothing is resonating with anybody who didn't watch the network before.
Right.
And so
Right.
they can hoover up the local talent, but they have to figure out how to figure out what people actually like. That's the pathway.
But they don't. That's the point. So as Eliana began this, so the only person in this ecosystem that is saying we're gonna break all of the rules to see what on earth can work as all of this transformation is taking place is Barry. Are they saying it at the Today Show? Are they, is whoever are they doing it on the nightly news programs on ABC and NBC? The whole idea is we're all going to be gone in 5 years if we don't do something to get to be sticky and to get people, given the fact that there is an unlimited universe of attention getters, that we are now just one small bobbing cork in the ocean of. Break all the China, see what happens. And the reason the newsletter that Eliana mentioned, the media newsletter of Oliver Darcy, but there are others. There's Lachlan Cartwright, there's Ben Smith. There are all these different newsletters covering the media freakout over Barry and stuff like that. And the reason that they are valuable is that it is literally like listening to people on the Titanic as they are drowning. And instead of them trying to climb their way up and figure out what to do, they're like sitting in their stateroom saying, the water is rising. It's so mean, this water. It's so cruel and it's not fair. Glub, 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 and then they're going to drown, as opposed to, like trying to figure out how to or the Poseidon adventure might be a better analogy. Like, you either have to climb up to the top of the ship and get yourself rescued, or you're going to drown. And the response of the general media is, America's a fascist country. Everyone is kowtowing to Trump. We're here, the last bastions of da da da, and they're trying to kill us off, even though we're so important. And then you're like, well, first of all, if you're so important and you're the last bastion, why can't you get anybody to pay watch you?
Yeah, but John,
yeah, okay.
Of course I agree with what you're saying, but from the standpoint of these specific individuals who are running and saying this, they personally, each one, would rather go down on, battleship resistance or, ship resistance, right, where they get paid $2 million a year or $3 million a year or $7 million a year, whatever inflated salary Jeff Zucker gave them, which is way more than they're worth on the open market or the market that you're talking about, then jump to battleship centrist, battleship Barry, right, battleship center right, whatever it might be, where they make $500,000 a year or $1 million a year, because both of their ideological predilections and their conception about who they are in the world and what they do and what is right and righteous in their own minds, and just what lines their own pockets.
Right. But okay, but you're talking about like the on-air talent. Like obviously
Yes,
the
I
people who are
am.
talking to these people
But also
are the
the
producers and
sizes
the
of
yeah,
the sizes and the number of people who produce the shows.
right. And
Both.
they think they want to go. Okay, so I'm saying let's put it in a slightly different frame, which is okay. I'm saying the smart money would be if you're MS Now or whatever, or including, by the way, CNN. Let us say, like, if it depends on how like totally unprincipled Barry and Ellison were willing to be, like somebody go make a play to take like left-wing psychotic resistance Twitter, and instead of like gussying it up with lipstick so that it's, you know, Mika and Joe on Morning Joe, like give it to Jennifer Welch, give it to, you know, Joe from Jersey, you know, give it up to them,
But isn't
because
this
they,
Air America's strategy?
yeah, but Air America
Is-
was 25 years ago. And Air America was a rate was a you know, was a radio network when radio was dying. Like then it didn't work. Also, it was timed very badly because it was sort of like during this surge of pro-American sentiment that was very full. But Air America was just, it's not fair that Rush Limbaugh has this big audience. So we're going to like do 24 hours a day of programming against Rush Limbaugh, is only on 3 hours a day, is still going to eat our lunch.
Yeah, and Air America wasn't grabbing social media phenoms because there were no social media phenoms yet.
Right. Well, they were grabbing, they look, fair is fair. Like they kind of invented Rachel Maddow. There were a couple of people who came out of Air America. I'm not, but obviously it died. It was unsuccessful. The way that early conservative television programming, like there was a network you've never heard of called National Empowerment, the National Empowerment Network, that started in the early 90s, that prefigured, that was the kind of failed bus and truck version of what Fox News became 4 or 5 years later. And you know, that Paul Weyrich was involved in. And so there are things where you can look at it and say, I'm saying there's all kinds of China you can break. It's not just give Jennifer Welch a show. It's also, like I say, should there be shows? Like, why is there a show? Maybe it should be like Twitch, where there's just always somebody on. You know, it doesn't matter when they leave or when they come back, or like one of those live streams where people are talking about a Supreme Court case and people come on and they drop off and they come in. There's no timing. Like why is it hour by hour? Why is it structured that way? That's not the way people consume news anymore. And all I'm saying is that Barry, being not a TV news person, like, you come to her and say, I have this idea, let's start a show at 9:47. She might say, why should I start a show at 9:47? That's confusing. Or she'd go like, tell me more. But if you go to like the head of ABC News, they're going to be like, well, that's not the way it works. We have our automatic system cut off at 9:59, and we obviously have to speak to the affiliates who are blah, blah, blah. And they'll tell you every reason not to change. So sometimes you got to bring in people who will say, here's how we change. There was a fantastic moment 30 years ago when we started the Weekly Standard, and Michael Kinsley, then late of the New Republic, went to Bill Gates and said, give me a magazine, publish me a magazine. And he did. He gave him Slate. So it was going to be an online magazine starting around, basically inspired by the Weekly Standard.
By the way, that's the original Slate pitch.
There you go. Right.
Michael Kinsley, give me a magazine.
Give me a magazine. So Mike goes and he gets this magazine and he's publishing it like a magazine, which is to say, it comes out on Wednesday. It's a full menu of there's a back of the book and there's a culture section and there are articles and there's front matter and all this. It's just, it's not in a codex. And people at Microsoft are saying to him, I don't think you really understand how this should be working, because you're not taking advantage of the immediacy of the fact that you can release something the minute that it's done. You don't have to like wait to send it to the printer, and then it goes to the printer comes out, and then you have to mail it to people. And it took Mike a year to like break free of the idea that he was a magazine editor editing, and this is how you edited a magazine, right? That he could release, he had an article, it was done, he could just put it out there. And Slate then kind of broke the model. If it was going to be an online magazine that wasn't going to have a print component, there was no reason to follow deadlines that were set largely because you had to send things to a printer. Commentary still sends things to a printer, but we know we're bifurcated. Seth writes blog posts every day. Abe writes a newsletter every day. We put some stuff out every day, and then we do still produce a physical magazine that we release online all at once a month. Eliana produces stuff that comes out all day, right? And then you have some things that appear on a weekly schedule, like the Style section, which you mentioned today by Andrew Stiles and others, and a fantastic back of the book that Vic Mattis edits at the Washington Free Beacon, the best culture section now available outside of commentaries pages in America. But that's not the model, right? So television is still lost in this model. It's half an hour here, an hour here, this, and you have prime time, and you have day part, and you have morning, and you have a morning show, and you have this, and nobody under the age of 70 is consuming their media this way.
I was just talking to somebody yesterday about how much this has changed for in digital, where you say some of it's on a schedule, sections that come out, and Politico really changed this back in the day, where it was like, we're going to publish things all day long. And then there was another big change with the advent of newsletters, where this is how people are taking in the morning newsletter. But then people are delivering news straight into your inbox all the time. And so we are sending full stories all day long. We rarely hold something until the next morning. And I think digital media has been really nimble in a way that television has not.
Right.
And so, yes, we're doing both. Like, there are sections and columns that hold, but so many things just go out when they're ready. And where it used to be, they'd post on a website and you can go see them there. Now they're coming straight to your inbox. Like, you're going to be alerted when it happens.
Right. But, just the human mind needs an organizing principle. Our organizing principle has been the 24-hour day, right? And so you tend to sleep when it's dark, and you tend to not, be up when it's light, and you tend to want a certain type of food in the morning and a certain type of food in the middle of the day, certain type of food in the evening. And similarly with your
Candace
media
Owens
diet,
just discovered that. Blew her mind.
Would you please? Abe last night was so hilarious on Twitter because Candace Owens, literally somebody discovered that Candace Owens did not know until 2 years ago that thunder was the sound of lightning. And
yes.
she heard thunder, and she was like, "What is that?" And her producer said, "It's thunder. There's a lightning storm." And she's like, "What is that?" Anyway, so Abe was having great fun with
it's not God bowling.
No, she thought she was safe because it's just thunder, not lightning. And the guy said, "Well, no, thunder is the sound of lightning." And she said, "What? My mind is blown."
Yeah. So Abe was extrapolating. Was spent the evening on Twitter extrapolating other discoveries that Candace Owens might have made during
ice, frozen water.
Yeah.
Trees start out.
That's the thing about Candace Owens is that
I'm not even sure like anything will top her. Remember that she thought that the quarters in Jerusalem were about who can live in which designated area. Why is it called the Jewish quarter? because only Jews can live there, and she felt that the Jewish quarter in Jerusalem was clearly discriminatory because
Right.
they had marked off an entire quarter for only Jews.
Yeah. Well, by the way, in that, I'm sure she reflects the opinions of hundreds of millions of people who hear
Right.
that and assume that that's the way it is. But I mean, it's interesting with Candace Owens because she's both evil and stupid. And it raises this interesting fact that you can be really good as a communicator in some weird way and also be like blitheringly dumb, which does not compute. Like it's hard to imagine how these two skills can coexist since basically you're riffing the whole time that you're. So I don't know what's going on there, but give Candace Owens a show. Like, that's what I'm saying. Not that I think that's terrible, and I don't want her to have a show, and I want there to be a culture that throws up guardrails and creates this. But if there isn't going to be one, and you're in an industry that is dying, you do what you have to do to save it. And like I say, if you actually want to spend your life in television and you work at CNN and you are not necessarily part of the idea that your purpose here is to save America from the coming fascist takeover of the United States at the hands of Donald Trump and the Ellisons, like, this is your chance to write a memo that says, I have this great idea to do this show at 4:29 and 30 seconds for 12 minutes because somebody might actually listen. Or do you just want to do the same shit everybody has done every day for the last 45 years on this lame network that for a time had a monopoly on being a 24-hour news broadcaster? Like, or do you not even have it in you to think through some way to do something that could be yours and could be fresh and could be interesting and that someone might actually give you a shot at? Okay, let's move on from this to talk about what's actually important, which isn't like television news, but the fact that the entire U.S. military is basically now standing there in the Middle East with F-22s on the ground in Israel, and I don't know how many ships are in the Gulf and near Iran. Israel spent the day yesterday blowing up all kinds of stuff in Lebanon to pacify, to sort of take Hezbollah out preemptively out of any kind of response if there's a war. Israel claims that they know that if a war starts, the Houthis are going to come in from Yemen, so presumably they have plans to preempt the Houthi efforts to hit Israel and all of that. And here we are. So either something is going to happen or something's not going to happen, and they can't stay there forever. These planes, these ships, these Americans, we're pulling people out of embassy. Mike Huckabee announced that some American consular officials or embassy officials or their families, if they want to leave, they should leave. China has pulled
fast.
a lot of its people out, huh?
And leave fast was the message.
And leave fast, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's actually not that easy to leave Israel, by the way. Just so people understand, like, there aren't that many flights out of Ben Gurion necessarily, and China said people should get out. Poland said people should get out. All these countries are saying you better get out now. So I assume that something is going to happen, unless it doesn't. Because Eliana, as you pointed out, we also have our vice president and whatever like weird rear guard Charles Lindbergh action he's playing there inside the White House is clearly pushing the boy. There's been a lot of progress with the Omanis, and we're going to have a meeting next week with Oman, and da 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 da. And isn't this interesting? And we don't really want to fight, but we will fight. But we don't want to fight. We don't. So either this is all just a kind of bodyguard, like the what was it, Churchill's phrase? So the bodyguard of lies. Either we're just blowing a lot of smoke as we are getting our ducks in a row to actually do this strike, which has already been decided, or something weirder is going on. So who's in which camp? Have we decided to go and we're just waiting for our ducks to get in a row, or are we still like Trump still hasn't made the decision?
I actually was struck by something else that Vance said in his interview with the Post, which was, and I'm not quoting it exactly, and this was on Air Force Two. He said something like, "There's a belief in some parts of MAGA that it's never okay to use military force, and that's just not the case. We will never get dragged into a years-long war, but sometimes we need to use military force," and that appeared to me to be preserving Trump's optionality here. He defended the potential use of military force, and I think that although the Omanis said there was a ton of progress, actions speak louder than words, and Huckabee's essentially action telling people, you should leave, suggests that the talks did not go as well as the Omanis suggest. Notably, Witkoff and Kushner said nothing, the American negotiators on the ground. So I would guess we're probably going to see something happen.
Progress.
It's important to note that there is no deal to be had. There's no deal on the table. Yes. It doesn't exist.
What do we want?
We went in and we said no. We said no enrichment, no missiles, and cut all the other crap out. And Iran has been announcing publicly every day, well, obviously we're going to enrich uranium. We're not going to give up your enrichment. There is no deal. So the question is whether the Iranians can somehow, I don't know, it's like Tom and Jerry, tire Trump out from chasing them around the room and just look for a way out, because this is not ending in a comprehensive nuclear deal. It's not. It's insane to think that it is. What the Iranians want is for Trump to take a kind of buyout, a kind of off-ramp. Right. But that would just mean Trump got tired of it. There's nothing that Trump could sign that he could also spin as somehow a victory. The Times yesterday had this piece where it said Trump is looking to be able to sign a deal that he can say is better than the deal Obama got. And it's like, getting robbed in the street is a better deal than Obama got. Like, if he wants that, he could have it anytime he wants. He doesn't want, we're so far past the Obama better deal than Obama. We're a decade since Obama left office, a decade. Trump isn't thinking that. He's thinking, how do I not look like I wimped out of this without, taking some sort of strike? And the answer is there isn't. There isn't a way down from this limb, because, as I wrote yesterday, pointed out, he sent 2 aircraft carriers, 6 missile destroyers, 10,000 service members, 16 naval ships, more than 100 fighter jets. There are 12 F-22 fighter jets with U.S. personnel on a base in Israel. There are 50 more aircraft at a base nearby in Jordan. And this is all after a fleet of F-15s and cargo planes made their way to the area. And all of this needs support ships. So that is more than most countries could possibly have at any one time. That is all the wings of the armed forces, a massive display of firepower and readiness. That's not a limb you can climb down from.
Plus, an entire army, military of another country that will be involved in a strike. That is Israel the most efficient and successful military in the world, plus our military.
Right.
And they're all sitting there, basically like just push the button and we're going.
I think we are headed toward war, but I cannot completely dismiss the possibility that Trump would climb down at this point. And I don't think it's because he's tired of the chase. I think it's because it would get him out of all the messy uncertainty of a war and its aftermath. And what concerns me is that the Iranians have started speaking his language. in the sense that they're talking about opening up investment opportunities and natural resource opportunities and partnerships. And that's the kind of thing that Trump likes to come away saying, look what I got. I got great deals for the U.S. Now, the thing is, I agree there is no deal to be had. It'll be a fake deal, as everything that this regime has ever negotiated with the West is. So I'm still. This is what, the third weekend that we've gone into thinking it could be now, So I tend to think we're going to attack, we're going to strike on this weekend or not, but I'm not certain. And Seth, I think your piece is great, and I think your argument is great. I think with Trump, there's always wiggle room.
Well, there is that possibility, and I leave that possibility open in the piece. But I want to be clear to make the point that is an embarrassing climb down. That there's no, my point is not that there's no way Trump will accept a way out. It's that there's no spinnable way out. There's no victory way to climb. The climb down now, he's too far up for people to believe that he's made some sort of genius deal. That's my point.
Well, the difficulty here is twofold. One of which is that he can spin it any way that he wants, and there is a phalanx of people who will support him and who he will be happy to hear are supporting him no matter what it is that he does, and they'll say that he did the brave thing and the right thing and the prudent thing, and he'll be, see, I'm brave and bright and prudent because I didn't get us involved in this war, or he'll say, I just made this amazing deal. They're not going to enrich for 4 years, and they've agreed they're not going to enrich for 3 years, or whatever it is. What a fantastic deal. And we know it's nonsense, and the world and people will go ha ha ha, but I don't know, it's not really going to matter in that sense. It could have gigantic geopolitical implications if people around the world see that he climbed down. My thing I just want to point out is it is now February 2026, right? The Obama JCPOA deal 1 year from now would have, had it remained in place, would have given Iran the legal right under this agreement and international law to develop nuclear weapons. Just so people are clear, Obama claimed in 2015 that it would not, because there were follow-on sanctions and there was this and there was that would keep them, would push it another 2 years, and then they would have all these incentives not to go to a nuclear weapon, but that they could enrich and then they could do whatever it was that they wanted, which is why it was a bad deal. Because at the end of it, Iran got a nuclear weapon. That was the whole reason to oppose the JCPOA at all. And if they knew they were going to get a weapon by 2028, they could have gotten a weapon by 2022 or 2023 had they had the wherewithal or ability to do so, and if our sanctions hadn't hurt them so much, and if the Israelis hadn't killed their entire nuclear scientific community off to make it harder for them to get there. But so Trump is sitting here having stopped the Iranian clock and then having bombed the Iranian nuclear program. Is he going to make a deal that effectively allows them, in some weird sense, to restart the clock by having a time limit on enrichment? That, because there's a time limit, means that the time limit ends, at which point, of course, there's no time limit anymore. So it just goes back to Iran doing what Iran wants to do, and he will have been the president who agreed to that. I don't see, that's where the climb down is. I don't see how he gets there. It violates his pulling out of the JCPOA. He's just, even if he says I'm not, he is effectively saying Iran will have the legal justification to enrich uranium to weapons grade levels as it builds ballistic missiles that will be able to be tipped by these nuclear weapons, and then they can go at Israel if they want to, or and an ICBM hit the United States. How can he do that, given everything that he has said, not only in this administration, but in his first? But he could. I just don't, but, and as I say, my hope is that we're going to learn, as we did after Operation Midnight Hammer, that there was method to this madness, that there is a serious plan, and that it is painstaking, and that they couldn't just pull the trigger in January when the massacring was going on. That when they said, okay, we're doing this, they needed to pre-position everything. They needed to have everything in place. They needed to have supply chains. They needed to have weaponry to replace the weaponry, that this is a multi-day, multi-week campaign, whatever, and that they needed to be prepped. And that they needed Israel to prepare itself as well, since it's going to be a potential battlefield that the Iranians will use. And they need to prep American bases and American positions, in and around the Gulf to protect them from Iranian strikes. So that's my hope, is that having started this, they're doing it not half-assedly and with this weird lack of seriousness about whether or not to go or stay, but that basically the decision was made to go, and that what we're seeing here is what it actually means to go. Remember, it took 2 years for us to develop the plans and materials to do D-Day. That was, of course, 80 years ago. I don't mean to, make a common analogy, but this isn't just a strike, 33 hours, you go in, you go out, you take out one, mountain and, one facility. So that's rare. Anybody have a recommendation as we go into the holiday? No? Okay. Nope. All right. Well, watch whatever you want. Break some things. Don't watch things on a schedule. You know what I'm saying? Like, watch 10 minutes of something and turn it off if you don't like it. That's what I say. I do that all day, every day. There are so many shows that I've started on Netflix and Apple. I got literally 7 minutes, and I'm like, nah, and that's it. Okay. So I'm not even going to tell you.
This is why, by the way, I found out that they do this on YouTube. They have a trailer for trailers now.
I know.
When you cook, because I watch movie trailers, so I know what's coming. I watch the trailer sections a lot, so I know what's coming.
Teaser
and
the
everything
trailer.
is like, it's like Mission Impossible trailer starts in 3, 2, 1, and then it's the trailer. And I was very confused. And people online said they do this because of the attention span, so that
Yeah, well, the other good thing is the 30-second teaser that at the end of it says trailer coming next week. So it's a trailer for the trailer is another winner. Okay. I don't know. We're just blathering on now. Have a great weekend. See you Monday. For Abe, Eliana, and Seth, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the kettle burning.